Welcome to the first episode of our series, Unveiling and Solving Ghostly Mysteries. Get ready to embark on a journey through the unknown, where we investigate and uncover the darkest and most eerie secrets of the paranormal world. Before diving into our first mystery, let us introduce the team of paranormal investigators who will guide you through these spine-chilling adventures. We are the Sephiroth team, for longtime friends united by the mission to protect the living and free lost souls. John Anderson. With his piercing eyes and analytical mind, John is the skeptic of the group. Always seeking rational answers, he balances the team with his critical thinking and logical approach. Carla Thompson. Gifted with a unique spiritual sensitivity, Carla is the mediator of the group. Her empathy and ability to hear spiritual whispers make her essential in communicating with the beyond. Luke Johnson. Practical and rational, Luke brings a grounded, technical perspective to investigations. His knowledge of technology and scientific methods helps keep the team focused and organized. Anna Williams. Intuitive and brave, Anna possesses mediumistic abilities that connect her deeply with the spiritual world. Her visions and intuitions guide the group at critical moments. In the darkness of the forest, where the silence is broken only by the whispers of the wind, a group of friends decides to camp near an isolated lake. Little do they know, this place holds a dark secret, a mystery that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. It was a moonless night, and the darkness seemed to envelop the entire world. John, Carla, Luke, and Anna decided to spend a weekend camping at Black Lake, a remote location known only to a few adventurers. The stories about the lake varied, but one always sent chills down their spines: the screams in the night. Many said they were just legends, but no one dared to stay there after dark to find out the truth. The group arrived at the lake at dusk. Quickly setting up their tents, they laughed and chatted carelessly, enjoying the tranquility of the place. The starry sky and the reflection of the stars on the lake created a magical atmosphere. By the lake's edge, they lit a campfire and shared horror stories, nervously laughing at the legends surrounding the area. As the night progressed, an oppressive silence took over the campsite. The laughter was replaced by uneasy murmurs. Anna, the most sensitive of the group, felt an inexplicable chill. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. The others looked at each other, confused. Suddenly, a high-pitched scream echoed through the forest, followed by a deadly silence. The friends froze. The scream seemed to come from the lake itself. Luke, trying to stay calm, suggested it might be an animal. But the screams continued, getting closer and more desperate. They decided to investigate, armed only with flashlights and shaky courage. As they approached the lake, they noticed a pale, almost translucent figure floating above the water. It was a woman with empty eyes and a look of deep pain. Carla let out a muffled scream upon recognizing her from old local stories. Mary, a young woman who had mysteriously disappeared decades ago. The screams intensified, now seeming to come from all directions. Panic set in among the group. John tried to run, but an invisible force made him fall to his knees. The figure of Mary slowly advanced, her eyes fixed on the terrified friends. "She wants help," murmured Anna, as if understanding the lost soul's pain. Gathering courage, Anna approached the water. "Mary, we're here to help. What do you need?" The figure stopped, the screams ceased, and for a moment, everything was silent. Mary raised her hand, pointing to the bottom of the lake. The friends, now united by fear and compassion, decided to dive in. They found an old chain attached to a stone, with something trapped in it. With much effort, they managed to bring a human skeleton to the surface, still chained. It was Mary. Upon freeing her remains, the figure vanished, taking the night screams with her. The mystery of Black Lake was finally solved, but the friends would never forget that night of terror. Mary's story and the night screams were forever etched in their minds, a dark reminder that some legends have a terrifyingly real basis. The next morning, still shaken, the friends decided to inform the local authorities about their discovery. The sheriff of the nearby small town listened to their story with a grim expression. Many have said they heard the screams, but no one had the courage to investigate. "You've done a great service to the community," he said, grateful but with a tone of caution. Mary's remains were exhumed and buried with dignity in the local cemetery. The story of her disappearance, decades ago, was an open wound for the older residents. Mary was the daughter of an influential farmer who vanished mysteriously one summer night. At the time, there were intense searches, but no trace was found. With the discovery, the community could finally find some peace, but for John, Carla, Luke, and Anna, the experience was much deeper. They knew they had touched the unknown, faced something many prefer to ignore. They decided never to speak of the night at Black Lake again, but each of them carried the invisible scars of that supernatural encounter. However, the lives of the four friends never fully returned to normal. What they experienced that night by Black Lake marked their souls indelibly. Each of them, in their own way, noticed that Mary's presence still lingered over them like a persistent shadow. John, who had always been the most skeptical, began to have disturbing dreams. In the middle of the night, he would wake up sweating, with the vision of Mary hovering over him, her empty eyes accusing him. He tried every way to ward off these nightmares, but the more he tried, the more they intensified. Carla, on the other hand, started hearing whispers. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but the whispers grew louder and clearer each day. "Help me," an ethereal voice said. "Find me." These words echoed in her mind day and night, driving her to the brink of madness. Luke, always the most rational, began seeing Mary's figure in unexpected places, reflected in windows, appearing in mirrors, always with that expression of deep pain. He tried to ignore these visions, convincing himself it was just his mind playing tricks, but their frequency began to undermine his sanity. Anna, the most sensitive, was the most affected. She felt Mary's presence all the time. It was as if the tormented soul had somehow attached itself to her. She constantly felt chills, as if someone was always behind her, watching her. With every step, every move, she felt the weight of Mary's presence. One day, unable to bear it any longer, the four friends gathered again. They sat in Anna's living room in silence, trying to find words to describe what each was going through. Finally, Anna broke the silence. "She's still with us," she said, her voice full of sadness. "Mary hasn't found peace. We need to do something." John, though reluctant, knew they couldn't continue living this way. "But what can we do? We've already found her body and buried her with dignity. What more does she want from us?" Carla, still hearing the whispers, responded, "I think Mary wants us to know the truth about what happened to her. The way we found her body, it wasn't an accident. It was murder. She wants justice." Luke, trying to stay calm, nodded. "We need to find out who was responsible. Only then can Mary rest." They decided to return to Black Lake, hoping to find more clues about what happened to Mary. Returning to the site was fraught with tension. The atmosphere seemed even heavier than before, as if the lake itself harbored resentment. Upon arriving, they went directly to the spot where they found Mary's body. They began searching around, hoping to find something they had missed. And then, under a pile of stones, they found an old diary. The pages were yellowed by time, but still legible. It was Mary's diary. In its pages, she narrated her life, her hopes, her fears. And in the last days, she described a man who was following her, a man who scared her. "He said that if I wasn't his, I wouldn't be anyone's," she wrote on the last page. "I'm afraid. He said he'd find me at the lake tonight." The friends looked at each other, horror etched on their faces. Mary hadn't just died. She was murdered, and the murderer was still free. They decided to take the diary to the authorities. The sheriff, upon reading it, was visibly shaken. "I know this man," he said, his voice trembling. "He was questioned at the time, but without proof, we couldn't do anything." With the diary in hand, the police reopened the case. The man, now elderly, was finally brought to justice. During the trial, the dark truth emerged. Mary had rejected his advances, and in a fit of jealousy and possessiveness, he killed her and chained her body in the lake to ensure it was never found. When the guilty verdict was delivered, a mixture of relief and sadness enveloped the friends. Mary finally had justice. However, her presence, though less oppressive, was still felt. John, Carla, Luke, and Anna knew that despite the justice, the pain of loss and the trauma of that night would never completely disappear. Black Lake would forever hold the dark memories of Mary and the bravery of the friends who brought the truth to light. And so, even after the murderer's conviction, Black Lake remained a place of mystery and melancholy. Those who ventured there said they heard soft whispers in the breeze, as if Mary was still there, silently thanking the friends who didn't forget her and fought to bring the truth to light. For John, Carla, Luke, and Anna, life went on, but none of them ever forgot the night they heard the screams at the lake. And whenever the wind blew, carrying whispers from the past, they knew Mary was at peace, but always present, a shadow dancing in the dark waters of Black Lake. However, the events of that night left deep scars on each of them. John, once the most skeptical of the group, embarked on a personal journey of self-discovery and paranormal investigation. He spent sleepless nights reading about spirits and rituals, determined to understand and perhaps protect himself from what they had experienced. His dreams continued to be haunted by the figure of Mary, her empty eyes pursuing him, demanding justice and peace. Carla, tormented by the incessant whispers, sought spiritual help. She participated in sessions with mediums and spiritual cleansing rituals, hoping to silence the voices that haunted her. She carried protective amulets and blessed candles, but the whispers persisted, whispering secrets and fears she could barely comprehend. Luke, the most rational, began seeing Mary's figure in reflections and shadows, always with that expression of deep pain. He tried to ignore these visions, convincing himself they were just tricks of his mind, but their frequency began to undermine his sanity. He avoided mirrors and any reflective surfaces, but the shadows seemed to follow him, constantly reminding him of the encounter. Anna, the most sensitive, felt Mary's presence in a constant and tangible way. It was as if the tormented soul had attached itself to her. She constantly felt chills, as if someone was always behind her, watching her. With every step, every move, she felt the weight of Mary's presence, like a persistent shadow in her life. 1 year after the events at Black Lake, the friends decided to reunite. They needed to confront their fears and find a way to move forward. They gathered at Anna's house, the only one who seemed to endure the constant presence of Mary without succumbing to fear. "We need to do something," began John, his voice filled with determination. "We can't keep living like this. We need to find a way to free Mary, and perhaps free ourselves as well." Carla nodded, her eyes reflecting the internal struggle she faced every day. "I agree. But how? What can we do that we haven't tried yet?" Luke, always the strategist, proposed a solution. "We need help. Someone who truly understands the paranormal. A specialist who can guide us." After several weeks of research, they found a paranormal activity specialist known for handling complex cases. Her name was Sophia, a woman with decades of experience and a reputation for successfully confronting the supernatural. Sophia listened to the friend's story attentively, her dark eyes reflecting understanding and empathy. "What you faced is real, and Mary's presence indicates that she is trapped, unable to move on. We need to free her and seal any other entity that might be associated with this place." Sophia took the friends back to Black Lake, now an even more sinister location after the collapse of the cabin. She prepared a liberation and protection ritual, using the objects found in the chest and the descriptions in Mary's diary. The night was especially dark when they began the ritual. Sophia guided each of the friends in their parts of the process, creating a circle of protection around the lake. The words of the ritual were ancient and powerful, resonating in the darkness. Suddenly, Mary's figure appeared in the center of the circle, her empty eyes now filled with a mix of relief and sadness. "Thank you," she said, her voice an echo of gratitude. "You are freeing me, but the entity is still here. You need to be strong." At the climax of the ritual, the entity manifested, angrier than ever, a dense, oppressive shadow that seemed to consume the light around it. Sophia, with surprising strength, channeled the circle's energy to contain the entity, while Mary used her last strength to help. With an ear-piercing scream, the entity was sealed, disappearing into the darkness. Mary, finally at peace, gave a final look of gratitude to the friends before disappearing as well, her soul finally freed. Black Lake, now purified, seemed different. The oppression had dissipated, replaced by a strange sense of tranquility. The friends knew that despite the terror they faced, they had done the right thing. Back in town, each of them felt a new lightness. John's nightmares ceased, Carla's whispers silenced, Luke's shadows disappeared, and Anna felt that Mary finally rested in peace. The experience united them in a way they could never have imagined. Mary's sacrifice and their own courage to face the unknown transformed them, and although the memory of that night remained, it was now a reminder of strength and overcoming. Thus, Black Lake became a story of warning but also of redemption, a place where evil was faced and defeated, and where the courage of the living freed the tormented soul of Mary. The night winds still whispered through the trees, but now they were whispers of peace, carrying the story of Mary and the friends who faced the darkness, reminding everyone that courage and friendship can overcome even the greatest horrors. Stay tuned to our channel. We will always have the continuation of the story of these four inseparable friends. In a quiet street where all the houses look alike, there's one exception: an abandoned house that no one dares to approach. The curiosity of a group of friends leads them to explore the place, unleashing terrifying events that will reveal the dark secrets of the house next door. In the city of Greenfield, there was a street known for its tranquility and picturesque charm. Well-kept houses lined both sides, except for one, the abandoned house at number 23. During the day, it seemed like just an old, neglected house, but at night, it took on a sinister aura that kept even the bravest away. The house, according to the oldest residents, was the scene of inexplicable events. Lights flickered in the windows, shadows moved independently, and sometimes laughter and whispers could be heard, even when the house was empty. No one knew exactly what had happened there, but everyone had a story to tell about the house next door. It was an autumn night when John, Carla, Luke, and Anna, inseparable friends since childhood, decided to explore the house. They were young and full of courage, believing they could uncover the mystery that terrified the neighborhood. Armed with flashlights and cell phones to document the adventure, they approached the house cautiously. "Are you ready to discover what's behind these walls?" asked John, trying to hide his own unease. The others nodded, although the tension was palpable. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking sinisterly as it was pushed open. The air inside the house was cold and heavy, as if decades of dust and secrets had accumulated there. The flashlight beams revealed furniture covered with sheets, old photographs, and an environment frozen in time. "Let's split up to cover more area," suggested Luke, always practical. John and Carla went upstairs, while Luke and Anna started exploring the ground floor. Upstairs, John and Carla found rooms full of personal belongings, as if the former residents had left in a hurry. There were children's toys, clothes, and even an untouched plate of food on a bedside table. Carla picked up a dusty diary from one of the shelves and began to read aloud. October 27th, 1963. "Something strange is happening. I hear voices at night and feel like I'm being watched. The children feel it too. I need to find out what's happening in this house." The reading was interrupted by a muffled scream coming from downstairs. John and Carla rushed down, finding Luke and Anna paralyzed with fear in the living room. A rocking chair that had been still minutes before was now moving on its own, creaking eerily. "We need to get out of here," said Anna, her voice trembling. "Something's not right." But before they could react, the flashlights began to flicker and a piercing cold enveloped the room. A shadow formed in the corner, growing until it became an indistinct but undeniably human figure. "Leave," the voice whispered, echoing through the walls. The friends ran to the door, but it slammed shut, trapping them inside. The figure moved closer, and the house seemed to vibrate with a dark energy. Desperate, John remembered the diary Carla was holding. "Read more quickly." Carla flipped through the pages, trembling, trying to find something that could help them. November 15th, 1963. "I've discovered what's happening. This place was built on an old cemetery. The souls resting here are trapped and furious. There is a way to calm them, but it's dangerous. Before she could continue, the figure disappeared, leaving the room in oppressive silence. With a final effort, John pushed the door, which finally gave way. They ran outside, feeling the heavy air dissipate as they crossed the threshold. Back in the safety of their home, the friends tried to understand what they had discovered. They decided to research more about the house's history, looking for any information that might clarify the mystery. They went to the city library, where they found old records that confirmed the diary. The house had indeed been built over an old cemetery. The records indicated that, in the 1920s, a cemetery had been decommissioned and the bodies removed, but not all were found. Many believe that the spirits of those still resting under the ground had cursed the place. Determined to solve the mystery and perhaps free the trapped souls, John suggested they return to the house with a more solid plan. We need to perform an exorcism. We can't let these souls suffer. With the help of a paranormal phenomenon specialist, the friends prepared to face the entity. The specialist, a man named Mark, brought a series of tools and detailed instructions on how to perform the ritual. On the appointed night, they returned to the house armed with candles, incense, amulets, and Mark's instructions. They began the ritual in the basement, the most likely place for intense spiritual activity. They lit the candles in a circle and started reciting the words indicated by Mark. At first, everything seemed calm, but as they progressed, the temperature dropped drastically and the candles began to flicker. "Keep going," said Mark, his voice firm despite the visible tension. Suddenly, the shadowy figure appeared again, but this time, it seemed angrier. The floor trembled, and a cacophony of voices filled the room. Terrified, the friends continued reciting the ritual, with Mark leading. "Leave this place, troubled souls. Find peace and move into the light," proclaimed Mark, holding an amulet in front of him. The figure seemed to hesitate, as if struggling against an invisible force. "We're close," shouted John, feeling a new wave of courage. "Keep going." Finally, with a sharp scream, the figure disappeared in a burst of light. Silence returned to the house, and the temperature slowly began to rise. The candles extinguished on their own, and the oppressive feeling that had accompanied them vanished. "We did it," said Mark, exhausted but relieved. "The souls are at peace now." The friends left the house, feeling a tremendous weight lifted off their shoulders. They returned home, determined never to meddle with forces they didn't fully understand. They decided to share their story, not as a horror tale, but as a warning about the dangers of tampering with the unknown. The impact of what they had experienced stayed with them forever. John continued to study paranormal phenomena with newfound reverence and respect. Carla dedicated herself to helping people who had gone through similar experiences, becoming a sort of spiritual counselor. Luke returned to his practical life, but with a new sense of humility and caution. Anna, always the most sensitive, felt a special connection with the spiritual world and began to develop her intuition and mediumistic abilities. The story of the house next door became an urban legend in Greenfield. The house, now free of hauntings, was renovated and sold. New residents moved in, unaware of what had happened there, but always noticing a sense of peace and tranquility that other places didn't offer. And so, the story of the haunted house next door became a lesson in courage, friendship, and respect for the unknown. The friends continued with their lives, but always remembered that night when they faced the supernatural and emerged stronger and more united than ever. The winds that blew through Greenfield carried with them the story of 4 brave friends and a spiritual guardian who guided them through the darkness. And as life went on, the legend of the house next door remained, an eternal reminder that some horror stories are indeed true. The story of the haunted house and the events that John, Carla, Luke, and Anna experienced became a central point in their lives. They realized that the battle against dark forces and aiding tormented souls were not just isolated events but a mission that extended throughout their lives. Now, more mature and with vast accumulated experience, the friends continued to receive requests for help from all over the country. In an abandoned camp where shadows seem to come to life, a group of friends uncovers a dark secret involving an ancient guardian. They don't know that their curiosity will lead them to a terrifying confrontation with forces beyond their comprehension. It was a cloudy afternoon when John, Carla, Luke, and Anna decided to explore the old, abandoned camp in the middle of the forest. The place, which once was a lively retreat for scouts and campers, had been deserted for decades, shrouded in legends of disappearances and paranormal activity. The camp, known as silent camping, was now a collection of dilapidated cabins and overgrown campfire areas. As they arrived, the friends felt a chill down their spines. The silence was almost tangible, interrupted only by the rustling of leaves in the wind. "I heard this place is haunted," Carla commented, trying to ease the tension with a joking tone. John laughed, but his eyes showed an unease he couldn't hide. Luke, always the most adventurous, suggested they explore the cabins. "Let's see what we find. Maybe there's something interesting inside." The first cabin they entered was nearly intact but covered in dust and cobwebs. On the walls, children's drawings and old photographs of smiling scouts created a dark contrast with the state of abandonment. Anna, who had always been more sensitive to energies around her, felt a growing discomfort. "This place gives me the creeps. It feels like we're being watched," she whispered. While exploring, they found an old diary hidden in a locked drawer. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but still legible. It belonged to a man named Edward, the former guardian of the camp. In the early pages, Edward described his love for the camp and the children who came there. But as they continued reading, the tone of the diary changed. Edward mentioned a feeling of a malevolent presence in the place, something he couldn't explain. "There's something here," Edward wrote in one of the last entries. "A dark force that I can't see, but I feel. I'm not alone." The friends exchanged uneasy glances. They decided to investigate further, following the diary's descriptions. The last entry mentioned an old cabin at the back of the camp, where Edward felt the presence the strongest. As they approached the cabin, they felt the air grow colder. The door was ajar, creaking ominously in the wind. Upon entering, they saw strange symbols drawn on the walls and floor, as if part of some ancient ritual. In the center of the cabin was an old, locked chest. With some effort, they managed to open it, revealing a collection of strange and macabre objects: bones, melted candles, and an old amulet. Suddenly, they felt a presence behind them. They turned quickly and saw the figure of a tall, thin man with empty eyes and a tormented expression. It was Edward, the guardian of the camp. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice echoing like a cold whisper. "This place is cursed." The friends stepped back, terrified. Edward began to tell his story, revealing that he had tried to protect the camp from a dark entity that had taken over the place. In his attempt to fight the evil, he became trapped between the world of the living and the dead, becoming the eternal guardian of the camp. "You need to leave before it's too late," Edward warned. "The entity that inhabits this place feeds on the fear and curiosity of intruders." But before they could react, the cabin began to shake. The entity, awakened by the presence of the friends, started to manifest. A dense, malevolent shadow took form, surrounding them with a paralyzing cold. John, Carla, Luke, and Anna tried to run, but the exit seemed to grow further away. Edward, with a final effort of spiritual strength, placed himself between the friends and the entity. "I'll protect you, but you must run and never come back." With a desperate cry, Edward channeled all his energy to contain the entity, giving the friends time to escape. They ran out of the cabin, hearing Edward's screams and the supernatural sounds of the battle behind them. When they finally reached the car, panting and in panic, they looked back and saw the cabin enveloped in a sinister light before collapsing completely. Without looking back again, they drove away as fast as possible, abandoning the camp. Back in the city, they reported the story to the authorities, who once again ignored the warnings about the abandoned camp. But the four knew the story was real. They decided never to return to that cursed place. Time passed, but the experience never left their minds. John continued to have nightmares about the entity, Carla still heard whispers, Luke saw shadows in his reflection, and Anna felt Edward's presence protecting her. And so, the abandoned camp remained a dark legend, a place avoided by all who knew the story of the Guardian and the entity. Edward's sacrifice ensured that, at least for now, the evil did not spread beyond the borders of silent camping. The forest, with its oppressive silence, continued to guard the dark secrets of the camp, while the night winds carried whispers of warning to those who dared to approach. For John, Carla, Luke, and Anna, life went on, but none of them ever forgot the guardian of the abandoned camp and the night they faced the unknown evil, an eternal reminder that some curiosities should remain untouched. The impact of that night was profound and lasting. John, once skeptical, began studying the paranormal, trying to understand what they had faced. He spent sleepless nights reading about entities, ghosts, and protection rituals. He became obsessed with finding a way to protect himself and his friends from any possible return of the entity. Carla, haunted by incessant whispers, sought spiritual help. She consulted mediums, participated in spiritual cleansing sessions, and always carried protective amulets. Yet the whispers never completely ceased, whispering secrets and fears she could barely comprehend. Luke, the most rational, struggled to maintain his sanity. Every reflection, every shadow, seemed to contain Edward's figure, always watching, always present. He began to avoid mirrors and any reflective surface, but the shadows seemed to follow him, constantly reminding him of the presence he desperately tried to forget. Anna, on the other hand, felt Edward's presence in a different way. Instead of fear, she felt a strange sense of protection. She knew Edward was there to ensure her safety, but that did not lessen the weight of the terror from that night. She felt responsible for ensuring that Edward's story and his sacrifice were not forgotten. 1 year after the terrible night, the friends decided to reunite. They needed to confront their fears and find a way to move forward. They gathered at Anna's house, the only one that seemed to endure Edward's constant presence without succumbing to fear. "We need to do something," began John, his voice filled with determination. "We can't keep living like this. We need to find a way to free Edward and, maybe, destroy this entity once and for all." Carla nodded, her eyes reflecting the internal struggle she faced every day. "I agree. But how? What can we do that we haven't tried yet?" Luke, always the strategist, proposed a solution. "We need help. Someone who truly understands the paranormal. A specialist who can guide us." After several weeks of research, they found a paranormal activity specialist known for handling complex cases. Her name was Sophia, a woman with decades of experience and a reputation for successfully confronting the supernatural. Sophia listened to the friend's story attentively, her dark eyes reflecting understanding and empathy. "What you faced is real, and Edward's presence indicates that he is trapped, unable to move on. We need to free him and seal the entity." Sophia took the friends back to the camp, now an even more sinister location after the cabin's collapse. She prepared a liberation and protection ritual, using the objects found in the chest and the descriptions in Edward's diary. The night was especially dark when they began the ritual. Sophia guided each of the friends in their parts of the process, creating a circle of protection around what remained of the cabin. The words of the ritual were ancient and powerful, resonating in the darkness. Suddenly, Edward's figure appeared in the center of the circle, his empty eyes now filled with a mix of relief and sadness. "Thank you," he said, his voice an echo of gratitude. "You are freeing me, but the entity is still here. You need to be strong." At the climax of the ritual, the entity manifested, angrier than ever, a dense, oppressive shadow that seemed to consume the light around it. Sophia, with surprising strength, channeled the circle's energy to contain the entity, while Edward used his last strength to help. With an ear-piercing scream, the entity was sealed, disappearing into the darkness. Edward, finally at peace, gave a final look of gratitude to the friends before disappearing as well, his soul finally freed. The camp, now purified, seemed different. The oppression had dissipated, replaced by a strange sense of tranquility. The friends knew that despite the terror they faced, they had done the right thing. Back in town, each of them felt a new lightness. John's nightmares ceased, Carla's whispers silenced, Luke's shadows disappeared, and Anna felt that Edward finally rested in peace. The experience united them in a way they could never have imagined. Edward's sacrifice and their own courage to face the unknown transformed them, and although the memory of that night remained, it was now a reminder of strength and overcoming. Thus, the abandoned camp of silent camping became a story of warning but also of redemption, a place where evil was faced and defeated, and where the courage of the living freed the tormented soul of a dedicated guardian. The night winds still whispered through the trees, but now they were whispers of peace, carrying Edward's story and the friends who faced the darkness, reminding everyone that courage and friendship can overcome even the greatest horrors. The events at the abandoned camp were a significant milestone for John, Carla, Luke, and Anna. This experience not only reaffirmed the strength of their friendship bonds, but also solidified their commitment to helping those who faced the unknown. They knew their journey was far from over, and that many other lost souls needed their help. Stay tuned to our channel for the continuation of the story of these inseparable friends.